Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Wealth Advisory's Top Stocks to Own. This month we're doing August 2023. I can't believe it's already almost August. I mean, it'll be August by the time you're watching this, but it's almost August while we're filming it, and that blows my mind. It seems like the less time I have left, the faster it goes. We were talking about this in the office the other day, and I feel like somebody really hit the nail on the head when they were like, well, when you're a kid, everything takes so long because when you're 10, another 10 years, that's like a whole lifetime. And they were like, now 10 years is like nothing, man. I've done 4 of those already.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, I for one am excited for the fall. We're in the middle of this brutal heat wave, and I'm always ready for the fall by the time we hit August.
Yeah.
Bring back the cold weather and football. I say, I've had enough.
Right,
I'm tapping out.
Oh, right there with you, man. And I'm kind of like that way with winter too, where I'm like, oh man, it's finally getting cold. Oh, this is awesome. We're gonna get some snow, and then by February, I'm like, get this cold weather out of here. I'm done with it. Let's go to the Caribbean. Let's go to Florida. Let's go somewhere where it's warm.
Sure.
Yeah, totally. But yeah, it is. You're right. It's brutally hot. And
the water in Florida is like 100 degrees.
Yeah. my wife's actually down there visiting her family, and she said it was like a jacuzzi. She's like, it's not cool until you get out and the wind hits.
Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, it's insane. It's insane. I was a swimmer in high school, and when we had to swim in a pool that was anything above 80 degrees, it was just terrible because you sweat in the water and you don't realize it, and so you start cramping up and stuff, and you're like, why am I cramping? It's not cold. It's like, oh, it's because I'm dehydrated. All of my water is now in the pool too, which is kind of gross.
Yeah, when you said that, put it that way.
But swimmers are kind of gross, so I guess it is what it is. But anyway, enough with the small talk. Let's talk a little bit about the top 10 from last month. We had some real rippers in there, Albemarle, and I would like to just apologize because last month I took credit for having Albemarle the previous month, and I was wrong. Jason had Albemarle the previous month. It was his brilliant pick. It was not my brilliant pick. I really wanted it to be.
Apology accepted.
I appreciate you accepting my apology on that one. I felt really bad afterwards when I went back and looked. It was like, oh, I totally took credit for his gain. And you had another great game with Albemarle last month, right?
Yeah, stock's doing well.
Yep. I had a huge one with Schlumberger. Or Schlumberger, however you want to call it. I love calling it Schlumberger. I'll always love that. It'll always make me smile. But we also had a couple that dragged our average down, so we were a little bit behind the markets. But you can't win them all. And we are undaunted, and we're back with 10 more picks for you. As usual, if you're watching on YouTube, you'll get our first 4, and then we're going to cut it off because this is a service that we provide for paying members of our investment newsletter, the Wealth Advisory. If you'd like to join us, I highly recommend it. I'm very biased, but I think there's a lot of value there. We've got a discounted link in the description below the video. You can go ahead and click that. You'll get basically the lowest price that we can offer for the Wealth Advisory. And honestly, it's a great deal. You get a lot more than just the top 10s. You get monthly issues, 12 new recommendations each month. We'll keep you updated on the stocks in the model portfolio, access to all of the reports and all of the analysis we've ever done. I mean, it's a really great deal. And, with a couple of the gains that we had last month, you could have paid for a whole year's subscription. So, it's a good deal. If you want to join us, we would love to have you, and we think it'd be a great idea. If you decide not to join us, that's okay too. We won't hold it against you. We'll keep posting these for as long as you want to watch them. But again, you'll only get the first 4, and we'll retain our top 6 for the paying subscribers. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get into it. And for my first pick this month, I'm going to bring back my biggest winner from last month because we like to let the winners run. And that is Schlumberger Limited, Schlumberger, as I like to call it. Ticker symbol is just SLB. I won't bother writing it because it's already there, and why work harder than I have to? Right? It's too hot for that. So anyway, this one was up 22% last month. I mean, that's huge. Basically, oil prices kind of went on a run last month. We went from $70 to $80 in practically no time. Schlumberger is also trading above its short-term and long-term moving averages, so that shows that it still has some momentum behind it. It's got those good technical indicators. And oil prices seem like they could keep heading higher. Like I said, they hit $80 last week, and that was the first time since, I want to say, April of this year. So basically they're still down a little bit for the year, but man, they ramped up over the past month. And it's one of these things where everyone needs it. And, we're pretty much out of oil in the SPR, so we're probably not going to be releasing any more of that. We already let it all out, back during the midterms last year. So now we've got to start refilling it. And, so we've got a floor where the president says he'll buy oil when it's below $70. So that's sort of like, a floor there, like, hey, once it hits 70, we're going to buy. Granted, we didn't buy when it was down under 70, like most recently, but we didn't release any, and it doesn't look like we're going to be able to release much more. So I think that we're going to return to a little bit more stable, more normal of an oil market, where it's supply and demand, and we don't have any of this extra supply just like magically coming online. So that, in a nutshell, is why I'm making Schlumberger my number 5 pick for this month, our number 10 pick for the whole list. And with that, I'll clear the screen and pass it to Jason for his pick, his number 5 pick.
Yeah, so, a lot of times I like to start off with one company that's really doing something interesting, and often that is a company like Lockheed Martin, LMT. They just signed a deal with NASA and DARPA to start making basically a spacecraft that is powered by nuclear energy. This is a huge step up. It's a huge advancement. They're going to use something that we've talked about here before, low-enriched uranium.
Okay.
Basically kind of put an actual micro nuclear reactor on board so that they don't need propellants. And if they're able to do this, it's going to mean a big leap forward for space rocket technology. And I mean, when you're out in orbit, really trying to fly around, specifically for future missions to Mars, this is a big deal because it would allow a spacecraft to travel further and faster and be more agile and maneuverable up there rather than using actual chemical propellants. Additionally, without those chemical propellants on board, it frees up added space for cargo, scientific instruments, or even astronauts. And so this is the kind of technology that we're going to be leaning on as we try to advance the space program to do things like, build permanent fixtures or bases on the moon or ultimately on Mars. That is a huge deal for them. Like I said, this is called nuclear thermal propulsion. It is 2 to 3 times more efficient than chemical propellants, and it's just a big step forward. And so they're working with NASA and DARPA on that. And DARPA's an important note there too, because the fact that the military is interested in this technology also tells you something about their plans and the plans of the Space Force going forward and the way that orbit is being militarized. And that's another big time trend that we're going to keep an eye on going forward. Lockheed Martin also did report earnings. They beat Wall Street estimates. It was $6.63 per share ahead of the $6.45 analysts had anticipated. They raised their profit outlook to $27 by basically almost a full dollar, to $27 to $27.20 a share, and they now expect full year net sales to be between $66 billion and $66.75 billion. Basically a $1 billion increase from their earlier forecast to 65 to 66. So things are going well for Lockheed Martin. You have all of the defense stuff to play with, but like I always talk about with Lockheed in particular, they are huge in the space industry. They are a huge, aerospace giant. This is a big advance for them. They're working on some really serious technology.
That's awesome, man. That's really exciting. The nuclear propulsion has been a long time coming.
Yeah.
So it's really exciting to see that
they're going to try to get that in there and have it in. They have to test it in space because they don't want to test it on Earth because basically the exhaust, for lack of a better term, I guess, it would pollute the atmosphere pretty terribly because we're talking about nuclear exhaust.
Right.
So they have to go out and really test it in space, and so that's what they're going to do in about 2027, and then hopefully kind of have this kind of thing by like 2030 and start conducting space missions with nuclear power rockets.
I think people forget about Space Force. I'm glad you mentioned it because we're really familiar with the Navy, the Marine Corps, the Army, the Air Force, but we've got another branch out there.
Yeah, it doesn't have that same tradition, and it's just as valuable. And like I said, and especially with respect to competition with China, China's been militarizing space for a while. They have satellite killers. They have satellite weapons. You're not supposed to do it. Like we all agreed that we weren't going to militarize space or the moon in particular. Guess what? It's happening. It's the new. Basically, we talk to military officials. They talk about it as the new high ground. It used to be America focused on air superiority because that was dominating the skies, dominating the highest level of combat. Mm-hmm. Now it's space. Now it's getting above even that.
Wow. Definitely exciting and interesting times we're living through. We'll call it that. We'll call it that. So that brings it back to me for my number 4 pick, which will be our number 8 pick this month, and the last one that I will be giving out for those of you watching on YouTube. And I honestly, I think it's a really good one, and it might surprise people, especially when I tell you how much it went up last month. It's Bank of America. Ticker symbol is BAC. And it was up 14% last month, and it's trading above its short-term moving averages, showing that it's still got some momentum behind it. And that might be surprising to people because, you think like interest rates are higher, banks have to pay higher interest, but higher interest rates are actually good for banks because they can charge higher interest and they make money off that spread between what they charge us and what they pay us. Also, you've got, trouble at regional banks is going to be good for national banks. Bank of America is too big to fail, so if we have more trouble with the regional banks, it seems like it's sort of blown over and things have cooled off. But if we have issues in the commercial real estate market, which a lot of people are nervous about or concerned with, commercial building prices, like office building prices are down something, I think I read this morning, something like 27% this year, which is pretty big. And you've literally got, large investors who are just handing the keys back to the company that loaned them the money to buy or build the building and being like, look, we can't make payments anymore. It's too expensive. We don't have enough people in them. So if we do have a problem with commercial real estate, that's going to hit the regional banks hardest of all because they're the ones that really finance most of that stuff. And like I just said, Bank of America is too big to fail. And whether you think that's a good thing or a bad thing, it doesn't really matter because it's good for the portfolio, because if there is trouble at these smaller banks, Bank of America will be one of the beneficiaries of that. So that's my thesis on Bank of America. We love it long term. It pays a great dividend. It's grown it basically the whole time that we've owned the stock. And I expect it'll probably keep growing that and give us some more share buybacks too. So Bank of America, my number 4 pick, our number 8 pick for the month. And let me clear my canvas, pass this back to Jason for his number 4 pick, which is...
Yeah, Viper. This is Viper Energy Partners. They own and acquire mineral and royalty interest in mostly the Permian Basin. So they are very, very closely tied to oil prices, which Jason already talked about, and I'm glad he brought it up. So this is always a fun ticker. This is Venom.
VNOM. Every once in a while I get confused and I refer to it as Venom instead of Viper.
Yeah, so on oil prices, we just hit another fresh 3-month high, and if you are a long time viewer and you've been watching, I've been bullish on oil prices all year. We talked about in the spring, it's carried on. WTI crude hit 79.82 a barrel, Brent 83.65, both the highest levels since April 19th. That was earlier last week. And I do think we're going to get to $90 a barrel this year. So the stock is kind of underperformed, when there was late last year when there was a kind of more of a downtrend in oil prices. It's on its way back up for sure. So, for all the reasons Jason told you, if you really want to get on oil prices, this is a stock that tracks them, pretty much mirrors them. It's going to go up if oil prices go up, and if we've got another run to 90, over 90 by the end of this year, you're going to see some real strong short-term gains here.
Oh, definitely. Something I really like about Viper too is that it's sort of like a real estate investment trust in that the way that it's structured, it's basically set up to create income for its shareholders. So they don't refine the oil, they don't drill, they don't explore, they don't do any of that stuff. They just own the properties and they get these royalties from the oil companies, which they're then able to spin off to us in distributions. And so that makes it another really great way to track the oil prices because, one, as you said, the share price sort of follows the price of oil, but two, you also have those nice juicy dividends coming out to boost your gains a little bit along the way.
Right.
Yep. Very good one. I like it. And that brings us to the end of our first 4 picks. So let's do a little recap here for those of you watching on YouTube, and then we're going to cut it off and we're going to get into the top 6 for our subscribers. So my first pick, our number 10 stock, is Schlumberger. It's an oil services company. It had a rip last month, up over 20%, and we think that momentum can carry through into August. So that's my first one. Next up, Jason.
Yeah, Lockheed Martin. Like I said, big advances coming down the road in aerospace, space exploration, and advancing to these higher level space projects that are now, after a long time of kind of underinvestment in space, a lot of times, I think we went to the moon in 1969, and then a few times more in the 1970s, and then just stopped. It For a long time, NASA was kind of like, why are we funding the space agency? Why, like, but now the competition with China, the technology that's going to allow us to, like I said, build at least temporary or permanent structures on Mars or the moon, this kind of new push to recolonize space, and obviously more advances in terms of satellites and weapons. Lockheed Martin is going to be at the forefront of all that. Like many defense contractors, had a great earnings period. Revenue up, guidance up, earnings up, everything's going right for Lockheed Martin.
Yep. Space is exciting again, and Lockheed Martin is in the thick of it. I like it. Coming in at number 8, my number 4 pick, have to keep these numbers straight in my head here, is Bank of America. Like I said, higher interest rates are good for banks. Interest rates are obviously, up. The Fed hiked last week and sort of left the door open to maybe do some more hikes. Honestly, I'm expecting another one in September. They may or may not do it, but this is the Fed that waited way too long to address inflation, so you've got to assume that they're going to address inflation for way too long, on the other side of the spectrum. The pendulum swings both ways, and it doesn't stop dead center. So, that's my thesis there. And Bank of America is just a great bank. It's too big to fail. If we have problems at the regional banks, it's going to be a beneficiary of that. And it pays a sweet dividend that it likes to grow. So good all the way around there. And that brings us to number 7.
Yeah, again, back to oil prices at a 3-month high, still trending up. We think they're going to go over $90 a barrel. You look at the data we're seeing, especially like the GDP numbers that came in over the past week. The economy's growing. There's strength. There's underlying strength here. There's flexibility. Also, demand in China, as China kind of tries to kickstart its economy, that's going to go up. So we're big on oil prices. I'm personally a bit bullish on oil prices, and I think Viper's one of the better ways to plan for sure.
Awesome. I like it. And so there you go. Those are our first 4, 10 through 7. And like I said, here we're going to cut it off for those of you watching on YouTube. If you'd like to get access to the rest of this month's list, plus all of the other things that come with a membership to the Wealth Advisory, we've got a discounted link in the description below the video. Go ahead, click that. You'll get the lowest price that we can offer for a membership to the Wealth Advisory. It's well worth it, but again, if you decide not to, we won't hold it against you. We'll keep putting these videos out for as long as you want to watch them. And all that we ask is you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up if you liked it. I mean, actually, if you didn't like it, give it a thumbs up too. No thumbs down. And make sure that you hit that bell to get notified when we post more content. And we'll keep putting these up for as long as you want to watch them. So again, thank you guys for being here. Thanks for coming and checking this out. And we'll see you next month.